Good morning, everyone. Happy belated Thanksgiving. I trust you didn't eat too much turkey. Everybody have turkey? How many had turkey? Whoa! How many had beef? How many had ham? All right. Beef, ham, turkey. Big ones of turkey. Well done. All right. Good to have you with us. We're anybody ever been to Greece? Oh, twice. All right. Well, you can go to sleep. The rest of us are going to watch. So we have a fellow, well, two of them actually were supposed to be here, but one came up sick this morning. So we got Ron to take over the whole business today. So a couple of things. Back on the table, there's a stranger book that walks through the Bible. So if you're interested in that, take them. But I think there'll be 3 there. There's the daily bread. These ones are left over a little bit. They're September, October, November, but you can do them. There's a couple of large print, which are October, November, December, I believe it is. So if you're like to help yourself with that, that would be good. Let me see. Next month, November 17th. Okay. So a little bit after the middle of the month, 17th. Now, I got a couple projects for you. December, we're going to do something a little bit different. And I would like you to bring me for next month, if you have a picture of when you were a child at Christmas. So if you can look that up, find a picture. I'm going to put them up on the screen, and you have to guess who it is. Didn't have cameras back then. Well, use your cell phone then. Okay? Yeah, if you can, I might not use them all, but if depends how many I get. Well, and put your name on the back of them so that I know who you are, and you get the picture back. So we're going to try and work it through that we can take a picture of your picture and put it up on the screen for you. So that's going to be part of the Christmas meeting. Bring your voices along. We're going to sing some carols as well. And see what else we can figure out for that. Then we quite often finish our prime timers in April. Some of you have been saying, still nice in May. Can't we have another one in May? So we're going to have a bus trip. So there's a sign-up sheet. That's going to be at the back table. That will be May the 17th. So if you are interested in a bit of a bus trip, it should be back by 3 o'clock, something like that maybe. Still leave here at 10 o'clock. And so if you're interested, put your name and phone number down. It's going to be a little bit expensive, well, more than what our meals cost here anyways. We'll be going out for lunch at a restaurant. So bring a little, save up your coins. Tell your kids that you need money for Christmas. Yep, mystery tour. a little bit. So we'll try and see what happens there. So that will be back on the desk here on the table. So sign up for that. We're a little skimpy today on our door prize because I could only find 3 of them instead of 4. So somebody's going to get left out. Well, more than somebody because I only got 3 out of 33. So the last 4 numbers, 5453. All right, Marilyn. All right. Do you like apple cider? All right. I'm going to put it down here. You pick one, get one of them on the way out today. Let me see. I think that's all I'm going to mention right now. I'm going to get Ron to come and share his trip to Greece. And now this isn't where you get dirty hands. Not that kind of Greece. So. Anyways, thanks, Ron.
Good morning. So, a bit of background on this trip. There's a friend of mine who works in Greece on a mission field. He's actually teaching there, and we'll get into that a little bit, what the different ministries are. So Kevin and I were both friends of his, and we were planning to do this trip for a while. And in the process of that, we were looking at the map, and we were like, Bulgaria's not far away. It's kind of in the same area, was the excuse anyway. And I have a cousin up there who's been serving for about 8 years now, I think. So went to visit him as well. So our flight, we went from Toronto, Montreal, and then across. It's about there's about an hour difference depending which direction you're headed. Going that way, it's only 9.5 hour flight. Coming back, it's about 10.5. So this is what we were greeted with when we landed in Athens. So this is just the leaving Toronto, and then this is first shot of Athens there. They do get a lot more interesting than that down the road, but so our trip plan was our first couple days we had to kind of tour around mainland Greece, and then we were going to be heading out to the different areas. So I'll be showing this map a couple times, but this is the loop we took. So this is Athens down here, and then you can kind of go around, visit a couple spots. Kevin and I were both road trip guys, and we weren't planning ahead that much, so we didn't have a lot of sites that we were specifically aiming to see, but we just enjoyed the drive, and if there was something that caught our attention, we kind of went and checked that out. And so through that, we actually ended up, we went through Corinth and across a bridge that was built relatively recently, but it's a bit of an interesting construction. And then up through kind of the heart of the mountainous area of Greece, and then up to Thessaloniki and back down the coast. So this was just leaving Athens. When we landed in Athens, we got our car, and we didn't spend a lot of time there because we were going to be coming back to that then to spend some time before we took our flight over to Bulgaria then. So this is on a little island just outside of Athens. We grabbed some breakfast there. And then the shot over the dash here, you can't see it real well, but on the top of this mountain there's a fortress. And this is actually the Corinth area that you'd be thinking of in the Bible, the letters to the Corinthians. And up on the hill there, that's a massive fortification. It's a part of the original city actually, and is believed to be an area where Paul would have likely ministered in as well. So this is just driving up, and as you can tell, Greece is geography and terrain-wise, Greece is very rocky, very dry most places, and that was fairly consistent through the whole thing. But they do have their plains and valleys and more fertile ground as well. This is just before we got up to the Acrocorinth, is that city on a hill portion. This is the Isthmus of Corinth, which is just a canal essentially that cuts through a narrow portion of the land right here. So this is the Gulf of Corinth here, and this cuts right through this narrow area here, so that shipping doesn't have to go all the way around the peninsula. Was the idea. It never went into great effect because it was too small, which is a little hard to believe because it's already 300 feet deep and about 80 feet wide. This was just a private yacht that was going through. It was an interesting construction, just late 1800s that they did that, but the side walls have been really unstable. Parts of it have collapsed in on itself a few times over the years, and it actually just reopened again in 19, I think. It was a bit of excavation needed doing again. So now this is back to that fortress on the hill. It's called the Acrocorinth, and this dates back to I want to say 600 BC, 1000 BC or more. So throughout the Bible, it's interesting. They talk about this city on a hill idea where you can see far and there's security in that. And it makes sense, you read it and it kind of makes sense to you. But then to actually see what they meant so some of these views here, from the top of this, you could see 20, 30 kilometers in some direction. So you got a better idea what they were talking about, why they wanted these, and why there was a sense of security there because they could see trouble coming from quite a ways off. So this is, fairly high up the mountain there, and this white patch, these are all the older buildings of Corinth. So that's actually, it's not the original Corinth city because that was destroyed by the Ottomans, but this is what was built in place. Sorry, not the Ottomans, the Romans. And they rebuilt this in place, so I think that's early AD somewhere, I'm not quite sure. And just more, they're a bit bright in this picture, but this is just more of the fortifications you can kind of see in the walkway up to the Acrocorinth. And this is a really good shot of kind of an idea what Greece is about. They're fairly agricultural economy, but in particular, so all these organized groves here that you can see, it's all olive trees. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but a huge portion of the agriculture there is based on olives. And one of the reasons is just their resilience in the dry heat, very hot climate. They can get by with very little rain, and they can also grow in unideal soil conditions. So see more pictures of that. Most of the hill country, especially, the soil is very shallow, but the olive trees actually manage to thrive, basically growing in rock. So it's pretty interesting to see. Another shot. So this here, the Acrocorinth, is behind me when I took this shot, and then this is facing the Acrocorinth a little more, and this is the Gulf of Corinth out here again. So the Isthmus would be somewhere way over more this direction. So after leaving there, that was right here, and then we traveled up the side of the water here to this crossing here, which is actually just early 2000s that there is a bridge crossing there. So it's called the Rio Antiro Bridge. It's not the longest in the world. It's not the highest. At the time, it was pretty close to the top of the list, but they did have some interesting challenges with it. The one is, which I found really ironic, they could, for Greece anyway, they couldn't find bedrock in the channel for building the bridge on, so they had to figure out another way to build their foundations. And what they actually did is they drove pipes. I think they were a couple 100 feet long, drove them through the sediment and then that's where they actually built the foundations of the bridge on these piers here. The next challenge was this bridge crosses a tectonic plate boundary, so the distance between the two sides is growing at about an inch a year, which is kind of a problem for a bridge. So they, with which they've solved that, they just made some special expansion joints, and I think there's parts that they have to change out every couple decades or so to make up the difference. And it does have one of the longer, I think at the time it was the longest when it was built in 2004 or early 2000s. It has one of the longer free spans between, so it's just over half a kilometer of free span road deck. And now it handles about roughly 11,000 vehicles a day across that bridge. And not all of that traffic, the traffic has increased since it's been handier to drive across this channel, but any traffic that needed to get between the two land masses used to be carried by ferry, so there was at least half a dozen ferries back and forth over this channel. And so just to give you an idea of the problem that bridge solved, before you had to ferry across somewhere in here, or you had to drive all the way around here so it really connected this land mass here with the rest of Greece. Just a couple more pictures. You can see this was driving up to it from the south and across it here. So from there we bedded down on the southwest shore here for the night, and then we were headed off to a place called Meteora, and that was through there's a major, you can just kind of see it on the map here, a major mountain range that runs through the heart of Greece there. So the way you would normally take that trip, it would be on this highway that goes through a valley in the mountain range, a little wider roads, a little more maintained. But again, we were there for the road trip, so we didn't do that. We picked a route that goes right through the mountains, and the reason this line looks so jagged is because there wouldn't be 100 feet between some of the turns, and this is just a zoomed in portion of what that looked like. So it was a very, very interesting drive, and brought some challenges with it too, as we'll come to see. So these are, all kinds of beautiful, beautiful scenery there. I'm going to note this here, a little rock on the road. This is a pretty shallow one. There's a lot of these roads are just cut up in the mountain, and it'd be like more like that for straight up and down. And the particular kind of rock there, wasn't very stable. Like up in northern Ontario, if you drive through there, where we've had to cut through rock, once it's blasted, then it's pretty stable. Whereas this is, I don't know what kind of a rock, but it's more sedimentary, so it wants to break up, and so there's a lot of rock falls on the road, a lot of debris. And it also tended to break up in relatively neat little sharp cornered squares, which created an issue. So, and then driving through the mountains, people still making a living, so there, once in a while you came across a herd of goats, and because of all the sharp bends, it was interesting navigating, because you had to watch. Like in this case, we were coming up on this and slowed way down. We were going to pull around it, and then there was a transport coming around the corner, so we had to fall back in and kind of pick your way around there. So it was a lot slower way than the highway, but far more interesting. And so those sharp little rocks, we caught one of them, and just instantaneously, it didn't tear the tire off the rim at least, but it was instantly flat. So we lost a couple hours waiting on a flatbed to pick us up, and then took us through to a town called Trikala, where they had a new tire on for us, and then we were able to go on our way. That was kind of fun for Kevin. So the guy I was traveling with, he's a long haul trucker, so anything to do with trucks he was interested in, and this way we got a truck ride out of it, so that was worth something too. Just another shot of the range. You can really see the fog here. Some of the steepest mountains we drove through, we don't have a lot of pictures of because it was raining fairly heavily. So we couldn't, car windows being flooded over with water, couldn't really get any good pictures. But we got some of these in some earlier places we stopped at least. And this is another. I think this is actually on the other side, on the west side of the mountains when I took this picture here. But then this is where we are actually headed. It's a place called the town. I'm pulling a blank on the name, but these rock formations are called Meteora. Small mountain range, well, barely a mountain range, but it is a few. It's over 1,000 feet up there, a little bit more. And that, just wanted to note, they really just come up out of the landscape, which is fascinating formation. But there's also that the kind of formation it is plays an important part in the history of that. So the history of Meteora, it's known as a monastic community. There's been many different monks and nuns have inhabited the area over the years. Originally, around 8th century, they started coming in and they would actually climb these rock walls by hand, and then they would live in these caves for isolation and time to contemplate, which it's understandable. It's hard to come by these days. So that from 8th century and possibly earlier, it's known that there were monks and living in this area. And then toward the end of the 14th century, early 15th century, the Byzantine Empire was coming apart, and the Ottomans were taking over a lot of this area, including they ended up taking over all of Greece. And they persecuted the Christian orthodoxy there quite a bit, in particular the monks. So they fled back to these hills, and that is when they actually started building monasteries here. So if you want to talk about challenging construction projects, I think I'll actually take the red tape we have nowadays over this, because they had there's over 20 monasteries built on just on the top of these rocks like this, and they had to crane, hook, and rope section everything up there. But yeah, they had their little communities complete with, they'd have gardens and such. I'm not sure what all the infrastructure was to maintain them, but they managed to live up there for long stretches of time. And to know, we actually walked up, so this is about a third of the way. There's a walkway up this area here that you can just see the edge of, and Kevin here. This goes all the way down into a valley and then back up, and you can actually walk up around here. So there's a door here that was closed because this monastery isn't open to public right now. And that's just straight up a tunnel and stairs carved through the rock here to get into the monastery. But that is actually a relatively recent addition, as they've been working on tourism in the area. Originally, the only access to these caves and to the monasteries was rope ladder and lift, essentially. They kept themselves very inaccessible. And here's just some more examples. You can see this is all brick, just very meticulously formed right around the rock. You wouldn't just go sit on your window ledge for anyhow, I don't think. There's another one. So as far as quantity, there's only 6 remaining. 15th century, there were about 20 built in a row, and over the history of the area, they figure there's been about 30 of them. But the area took a beating, particularly in World War II, so there's only about 6 of them remaining anymore. And some of them are in use yet, actually. They have populations. So that was, our trip through the mountains here to Meteora. And then same night, we went and did this little jaunt over to Thessalonica. So this is another fairly ancient city. It's, believe it was founded 3500 BC, roughly. Or the area, it wasn't called Thessaloniki originally. It was, area has been inhabited since that time roughly. And some of the interesting architecture here, so this is actually a portion of the original wall. You can just barely see the gap between the buildings here, but there's actually still the original wall running down through the city. And it's interesting, there's houses, they're just built onto the backside of that wall. That's their living room wall. A few thousand years old, but it still works. And the place, the name Thessaloniki actually came from uh, the founder, the king of Macedonia at the time, who actually established it as a city. Then he named it for his wife, which was a sister to Alexander the Great. And one of the interesting things with it is the mentality of construction around there still holds true. A lot of stone and marble. I think they'd laugh at us how uh, special we find that for a countertop or something, because they use it everywhere. This whole area is paved in marble, and even this is obviously a monument area. Um, and this is so that to do something kind of special, this is actually a solid block of granite that they put the bronze statue on, and this is a mural of some of Alexander's conquest. And yeah, so that whole area is paved in marble, which is, it is a beautiful area, but it's actually relatively common throughout that portion of the city. Even just the curbs on the streets and stuff, it's solid marble. And I just took a picture of this because it was interesting to me that that kind of construction mentality persists, because this is a fairly new government building, some kind of administrative, and that's all made out of stone as well. Another shot of the wall there. This is one of Kevin's. He was further up, and you can see how it's been kind of built around. It's a little deceptive. This is a couple clicks actually, 2 or 3, and this swath is fairly wide, a couple 100 feet wide actually. The wall itself, I'm not sure how wide it is, probably 20, 30 feet or so. So from there, we drove on down the coast along the east side to complete our loop back to Athens, where we'd started. It was raining very heavy at that time. You may have heard actually of flooding issues in recent times. We actually got to drive through that on the way down here. Some of these areas, so the main rainfall was more in this area here, which if you can see kind of on the map, this is actually a fairly flat area. So this was their fertile farmland where they got most of the rain. 21 inches in 10 hours they received. So it was aggressive. Likewise, we don't have a lot of pictures of that area, but it was another good drive. And then we returned back to Athens, and we got to spend a bit of time there. So the area was inhabited as early as 6000 BC, they think is possible. So it's a very, very long-standing settlement. And later, as it got established as a city, it was named Athens after the Greek goddess Athena, Greek goddess of wisdom in Greek mythology. And Athens is specifically mentioned in Acts a couple of times where Paul is preaching there. That's where he finds this statue or monument to an unknown god, and he questions them on that. And some of those conversations actually happen so where this picture is taken from is up a hill a ways called the Acropolis, which is also mentioned in Acts. We'll get into what role that all plays. But here is a bit of a view of the city, and it's like this pretty much 360 degrees around the Acropolis is just sprawling buildings, old and new. So this is a shot up at the Acropolis. So the hill, so this is the Parthenon, which people have often heard of. It's the ruins of a temple that they built to Athena. The Acropolis is actually what they call this mountain. And again, you can see it's fairly steep walled, so the original inhabitation of the area They would go up there because it was very defensible. And then over time, they began building city around it. And later, then, as it became it became the center of Attica area and the ruling city in the area. And there was actually a large palace built up on the backside of this, which there's some foundations left, but it's been built over for the most part by the Greeks when they made the Parthenon. And there's also a bunch of other libraries and smaller worship vestibules around that. And this is actually, it was a gathering point for intellectuals and folks to talk about ideas. So in holding with, like they named the city after the goddess of wisdom. So, and it says in Acts, I forget exactly how it's worded, but the Athenians were known to spend all day talking about thinking kind of thing. And that was all over the city, that there have been different gathering points, but this was definitely considered the main one. And it's actually mentioned about Paul uh, I think it's when he first arrives in Athens. Came through the city and began ministering there and discussing with different intellectuals at the time about telling them the actual gospel. Some more views from up top there. This is an old so another interesting thing with Athens is it's actually the birthplace of modern democracy. So it was in Athens where it first they started governing in a manner, they overthrew the aristocracy of the era, and then they started implementing democracy. It was several hundred years in the making, actually, where they figured out how to actually get more people involved in government. But this is one of the early. They had another name for it, but we would end up calling it a senate nowadays. And this here, there's another close up of it somewhere. Is a temple that was built sometime in the last few thousand years, and it's just all over Greece. There's just ruins of anything and everything. Afraid I'm pulling a blank on this one. So this is that temple I was talking about, but I don't remember exactly what the worship there was. So from there, we flew from Athens up to Sofia in Bulgaria. We didn't really spend. So this is a shot. That was in the evening. We think we arrived at the hotel here about 10:30 in the evening or so. This was the next morning. We've got a couple pictures of that, but we didn't spend really any time there. We grabbed the car and headed over to my cousin's because we were only going to be in Bulgaria for about 2 days. So this is just a shot. One of the things you'll notice on the mountains in Greece, it was fairly green. The south side, like where Corinth was, it was quite a bit drier. And when we get to the island where Austin is actually serving, there it's very dry. So something we noticed was just how in Bulgaria there's a lot more water available. It doesn't rain much, but the water table is extremely shallow. It's like 9 to 15 feet you can dig down and hit water. So, which has challenges to it as well, but overall the land is far greener, more growing there than Greece. And so this is Sofia. Athens was down here where we flew up, and then this was our drive, is just under 2 hours. So the village where my cousin lives is right here. It's about 15 minutes from Plovdiv, which is it gets a little hard to tell how old some of these cities are, but Plovdiv is, of course, if you ask anybody from Plovdiv, it's for sure the oldest city known. But it is certainly predates 6000 BC that the area has been inhabited. So it's a very ancient city, and it's interesting because it's not the area we think of. We think of Greek Empire and Roman Empire as being old, but this has been an area that has definitely been inhabited, and we'll see it in a larger map later why that is. But one of the reasons is just it's a very fertile area. There's excellent farmland around there. And so this is Kevin and I just I think my cousin took that shot over the city, and this is kind of if you remember back to Greece, they used a lot of lighter colors. It was something we just noticed looking at the pictures later. It's like pretty much everything has these red roofs in Bulgaria, and Greece for some reason is white. So this is a restored building, actual proper wood shutters on there. Cobblestone paths and streets everywhere. The streets, there is a vast majority of the streets in Old Plovdiv that you would not get a typical car from here through. And the cars that we were driving, you had to be comfortable with less than a foot clearance over the size of your car, a lot of places. And the streets also are very winding because they're meant for pedestrian traffic because that's what the old city was, right? But we were fortunate. We gave the wheel to my cousin because when they first moved to Bulgaria 8 years ago, this was the city they moved into for their language training. So 4 days a week they were training in Bulgarian, and then they would tour the city at other times. So he knew this area very well. He never, yeah, I don't know, the guy is nuts. He just has a map of the area, and he was going down every street imaginable till we found parking somewhere close to where we were looking to be. One of the wonderful provisions of this trip was, so this day was actually, Bulgarians have a lot of holidays commemorating different things, and this was one of those days. This was September 6th, I believe, and this here, I think, yeah. So I'll get back to these stairs in a minute here. They were interesting to me. So this is one of the amphitheaters in Plovdiv, and it was because of the holiday. It was actually open to public. You could just walk in there, and it was interesting. There were kids. There is a sound system there now to facilitate recording and playing music and such, but there were kids playing down here on the stage, and we were 50, 60 feet up, and you could hear no problem there. It's an interesting acoustic setup. Back to these stairs, what I found interesting, I've been doing a lot of construction in the last year and a half, and there's all kinds of red tape and code around exactly what shape and size and windows you got to be inside of, and this just perfectly broke all of them. It was the depth of the tread was probably right. But then the rise would be like 12 inches, so you can kind of see it's a very steep stairs. But and that's what they needed to get down the amphitheater, so they did it. I was like, I really appreciate that. The other thing in our codes is there's a very specific guideline how much variation between the stairs there can be through the whole set, and it's like half an inch, and there was easy 1.5 2 inches difference from some of these steps, because that's what you needed to get down there, so that's what they did. That simple. I liked it. So there's a lot of, again, stone construction, and this stuff's been around. This amphitheater, I believe, was built early 80s sometime by the Romans, I believe. So a lot of stone cut construction. This arch, no support, it's just wedged stone. They've been very skillfully crafted with their angle on them. And I wish I had a closer picture, but there is an air gap there. Those sides are flat and they fit perfectly, and they've stayed there for however many years. And this is further on through the city. A very fascinating and also common feature of these older metropolis areas is the aqueduct. Which I believe the Romans were the first to do it, but it's also just all over the place in these old cities. So the aqueduct is how they actually generated running water within the cities. So this is the ruins of one that actually started up I'm not sure how many kilometers, probably 50 plus kilometers away in the mountains. And then there's a gradual slope built into the thing into the city, and that slope bring the water from up high down into the city. That's what created their water pressure, and they could channel it throughout the city. And this, so the overall aqueduct is fairly ruined here, so it's hard to see. We saw a better one on the island then, but I wanted to note this up here. That little black spot, that's actually an enclosed trough on the top of the piers, and that is where the water would actually flow through, and you can see that better here than on the one in Mittelini. So to outline what they're doing there a bit, so this is my cousin Justice and his wife Janelle and their family, Kevin and myself. So their ministry started about 8 years ago, and their primary thing was started with Justice and another family. Their primary operations are actually working in the community. So Justice has a strong background in excavating and construction, and there's a lot of things about the mentality of the place that are different. One of the major cultural differences, they're only 30 years out from being part of the USSR. So the communist mentality, they definitely wanted to be free of that, but now learning how to be free of that, learning how to function without that. And so demonstrating different integrity in work, and also demonstrating grace in the way they deal with people. So because they have their own equipment and businesses doing construction projects, they can employ guys who the community has given up on, who for whatever reason have gotten very downtrodden in life, and they've actually had some success in people realizing that there is hope yet. Another portion of it is translation. Bible translation isn't a problem. It's common enough for there's good translations in Bulgarian of the Bible, but worship music, on the other hand, is a lot more sparse. So Janelle and Jordan's wife, can't remember her name, they and some other local believers have been working on translating praise and worship and hymns, and it's quite a task because Bulgarian, it's vastly different from English in the way it's constructed. So any translation work is never word for word. It just languages put together their thoughts differently, so it's not that simple. And to top it off, it's music, so to translate the meaning in a way that also has rhythm and flow to it. A lot of challenges to that. And then there's also literature, which this is where the mission actually started from. So the church, their sending church, is Conservative Mennonite Conference of Ontario, CMCO. And that church was supporting a printing and distribution operation in Bulgaria for many decades already. But that family was wanting to get out of it a little bit. They believe they were an older couple, wanting to retire from it. But they really wanted also some people to actually more boots on the ground in terms of living out the gospel there. And Justice and Jordan and their families answered that call. So from there, we drove back from Plovdiv to Sofia and flew back. And that flight was delayed about an hour and a half. So by the time we landed in Athens, it was about 1:30. So we slept great. And to top it off, it wasn't worth leaving the terminal because the flight to the island that we needed to catch next was early in the morning. It was left 6:30 a.m. So to go through security and stuff, we had to be back up at about 4:45. So we didn't rest long or very much. So from there we flew across. So this is the island of Lesvos where Austin's working. And this area right here is Turkey, which we'll get into that geography and its implications in a bit. This is a shot out of the window coming up to the island. So Lesvos, yeah, it's an island in the Aegean Sea, and it's been inhabited actually mostly by uh, people from the Ottoman Empire in the past. This fortification here is on the east corner in Mytilene. It's a castle that was built for defense of the coast. Not quite sure when. I want to say it was 1400s or earlier, but I'm not positive on that. More of the fortification. So this is on the Turkey would be behind us here, with the coast and everything. It's just looking up at the wall. So back to this aqueduct thing. That this is the trough that's supposed to be on top, and this is actually what that construction would look like when it's a little more intact. This doesn't have the trough on it anymore, but it would have been sitting right on here. And you can get I'm not sure how high this was, but you can get a bit of an idea here because Kevin's standing there and he's 6 foot something already. So yeah, and these arches in construction, it's impressive, no doubt. And the interesting thing is that would have been considered fairly rough work for the stonemasons of the day, because they just flattened the sides and squared the corners so that everything fit together. And you can kind of see that in all the joints. But then most of the rock face, if it didn't need cutting, they didn't bother. But it's all of this. There's no mortar involved. This is all dry fit stone. Another shot of it from further up the hill. Again, there's olive groves everywhere. The other interesting thing with the olive groves, most of these trees will be a few hundred years old, so they're past, the grove is taken care of by different generations. And there's another shot of that aqueduct. So the taller structure, that is how they would bridge over a valley to keep the slope about right. And then this here, this is how they channeled it over mountains and around obstacles and such. And this is actually Austin, the guy. I don't know if any of you would know them, or possibly Les and Carolyn, his parents. Carolyn works at Kindred, and Les has a bike shop in Farewell there. It's their son. This picture was interesting to me. This tree here, again, the breeds of that they have are very resilient in the heat, and that's mostly rock there. There's some sand and clay, but that's mostly rock that thing's growing in. And again, it's a fairly agricultural based economy. So there's all kinds of interesting things, and it just was interesting to me. It's a pretty ubiquitous site on farmlands, is good old Roscoe's. As far as climate, this was very warm and dry. At this point, it had been 3 months since their last rain, which is fairly typical. And actually, Austin was back for a surprise visit in the start of October. And he said, yeah, it still hadn't rained. So that was about 4 months then. I haven't talked with him recently if it has yet or not. But that's relatively typical for them. And it's interesting, there's a family there of Beachy Amish from Ireland. And he said it's interesting what you get used to, because he was saying here, yeah, 3 months, and that's dry, but it's fairly normal. And in Ireland, he said if it hasn't rained for a month, then they figure they have a drought. And another shot out over the valley. So this was actually the kind of the northwest corner of the island we were driving around, and you can just barely see it, but this tip of landmass here, that's actually Turkey as well. So there's anywhere around the east side of the island you looked, you could see Turkey, only a couple kilometers away. This is a nice shot Kevin got on the next morning, sunrise over Turkey there. And part of that trip that we took around the island was we stopped by this monastery, monastery of St. Ignatius. So it's not, by Greek standards, it's pretty young. It's only 1526 that they built it. But there's some significant things that have happened there, and various theologies. I'm not sure what the history all is that came out of there. This is a fairly typical worship hall for Greek Orthodoxy. And one of the other things that we found in the kitchen here was there was a plaque commemorating when the Ottomans actually surrendered the island to the Greeks in 1912. So the mission in Lesvos, to understand the mission, we need to understand the geography and kind of the socio-political situation of the area. So this is the island here. This is Turkey and Asia over on this side. For basically all of history, this choke point here has been high traffic, and it's what gave the Byzantine Empire, this Istanbul used to be called Constantinople, and they ruled this area because they controlled the vast majority of the trade that was heading into Europe and from Europe to Asia. So that crossroads there has always been very critical. And likewise it is now, especially with refugee traffic. So on the island at this, or when we were there, the Moria camp, its population was considered relatively low at that time, and that was 2000. And busier time would be closer to 7,000 refugees on the island there. And they come, because of the geography, they come from, end up getting funneled through that area from many different locations. So there were refugees there, quite a few from Africa that would actually come up through here. As far south as Kenya, DRC, and then even as far east as Pakistan, they would travel up through there. And the reason for that is if they can get through Turkey and onto Greek soil, then they have a lot better shot at getting paperwork to actually immigrate to a country with more opportunities and hopefully more peace. So the ministry there, the families are there seeking to connect with these people. They obviously have very troubled lives and are desperately looking for hope, right? So there's been a lot of good connections and people saved there and seeing lives changed, and yeah, new life brought to these families has been very rewarding for them. And Austin's role there is as a school teacher to the missionaries' children. So for the missions to generate opportunity to minister to the refugees, they actually have a small farm that they work, and they employ refugees to work on there. Gives them something to do, because one of the big issues with those camps is you are just eat and sleep waiting for your paperwork to go through, and it can take years. The average wait time is a year and a half or something like that. So having something to do is a huge benefit for them, and it also, in particular, the mission tries to employ people who are actually interested in immigrating to Greece, which the vast majority aren't. They're actually looking to get in further into Europe. But that has helped some relations anyway, with locals as well. So they grow crops, they sell them at a roadside stand, but they also distribute a lot of that fresh food in the camp itself, so that adds to the ministry as well. Another thing they have going, one of the fellow from Ireland, he has a strong background in woodworking, so they have started making spoons and such that they can also sell in local shops. And this is just a hit and miss diesel for pumping water. That one has been retired. They're using electric pump now. Irrigation is very critical. As I said, it's very dry. So for them, it's not, like around here, it's not typical to have to irrigate. We're used to fairly consistent rain, or too much. But around there, that's just part of taking care of the crops, is you got to pump water. So Austin's ministry then, specifically, he is tutoring the children of the families that are ministering to the refugees, as well as in his spare time, he works in the camp some. So there's 2 full-time families there. This is a Christian Aid Ministries operation. There's 2 full-time families there, and there's always, not quite always, but there's often at least 1 or 2 families there for short-term, 3-month stints. They can minister there. They can be in Greece for 3 months at a time as a traveler without a visa. Anything longer than that requires some form of visa. So this is Austin's 3rd year that he's starting on, and the first year was really off and on because he could only be there as a visitor, but they actually got visa for him now, so he was there all of last year and also will be all of this year then as well. As far as the kind of schooling it is, it's if you're familiar with parochial schools around here, the Old Orders and Markhams, it's kind of like that. So he's he doesn't teach on specific subjects all the time. It's more tutoring them through their curriculum, which he covers grades here from, it's like a grade 2 he's talking to right there, and then your 9, 10 back here. So it's a wide range and a good count of students. I think he's at 8 or something right now, so it's keeps him busy. So that's about the extent of that. We sat through a lengthy flight home and recuperated from that and had fun on the way.
It's amazing how God created everything. But just to set out the right trees in the right climate and the right rock formations and just the abilities that he's given people to build something like that by hand. Like we look around and see bridges being put together with great big dozers and high hose and everything else that goes on, quick cement, and they didn't have anything like that. But those pillars, all dry, fitted, without any mortar, and they've sat there for centuries. So wonderful. I'm going to pull one more here for the moment. Five, 4, 6, 2. 5, 4, 6, 2. Anybody got that one? Must have. All right. Good grab. Last one that I just handed out. All right. You get one of these on the way out. All right. Let's go have a coffee and come back. And we have Mark Hardwick with us this morning, all the way from Clinton. So he's with the Faith Mission that I mentioned there earlier, I think, and to some of you. But anyways, we'll have a coffee and head back in the next 10 minutes or so.